Okay, here we go. Let me just turn off the notification. Okay, after Zok. Zok Telegram, Makabel Sada Mechaveroi, Lishvua Echad, for a full Shemitah cycle, Bisheva Meaisos, for 700 zuz, Hashvius Minaminyan, meaning you have to pay rent for Shvius even though you're not able to cultivate the land and get benefit out of it. Kiblai Menu Sheva Shonim Bisheva Meaisos, but if I rent it for 7 years, not for a Shemitah cycle, so then I'm paying for productive years, and therefore Eina Shvius Minaminyan. And this ends the discussion that we've been having in Perka Makabel about Chakiras and Kablonos, and now we're starting a whole new subject of paying employees. So the halach is Schir Yoim Goiva Kol, the time to pay a worker that was hired to work for you the entire day is all night long. As Rashi points out on the first wide line, Schir Shepeulasei L'Yoim V'Yoytze L'Erev, and his work period ends in the evening. Goiva Kol Halayla, the Bailam have throughout the night to pay. That's where he's mechuyev to pay. Kol Halayla who's man gviyos. The pay time, the time to pay is that night. Bein le'inyin shvua shetiknu lo chachamim schir bezmani hu nishpa v'naito. We learned that if the owner claims that he thinks he paid, and the employee is sure he wasn't paid, we said since normally the nitvas swears and is potter to pay, but since the owner is busy with so many employees, it's hard for him to keep track of who paid and who he didn't. We take the shvu away from him, and we let the employee swear to collect. That is during the collection period. There's also a lav that we're going to learn about. There's multiple lavas that apply to someone who doesn't pay. So it says le'savei alav hashemesh. He's not over that, because le'savei alav hashemesh means don't delay until the sun sets. Here, the period of time that you have to pay is nighttime, so you have to pay before the sun rises. So the lav that applies to someone whose work term was during the day, for him, the law that applies to such an employee is don't hold on to your employee's pay until the morning because you have all night to pay. That is a look of a Schir Yoim. What about a Schir Laila? It's the opposite. If his employment period ended at daylight, so the period of time when the employee is mechuyev to pay is all day. As Rashi says, again, mainly in Shvua, there is no Isser Bal Tolan on somebody who works through the night. The only issue that applies to him is El Mishum Le'Savai Olav Hashemesh. The Gemara Yalaflo, the Gemara is going to go through in detail all the relevant lavin because there are more involved and how they apply to each type of employee. Okay, Gavaltik. Schir Shois. What if you're working a couple of hours during the day? So then the halach is goyva kol halayla v'chol hayom. He could work. He's goyva all night and all day. What is cheshois? Goyva kol hayom v'chol halayla. Zok to Gemara. Amaroyim farshla the Gemara. There's going to be a machlokes amaroyim about how this works. So again, he wasn't hired for the whole day. He was hired for a couple of hours during the day. When is his pay period? So the Mishnah says it's the rest of the day and all night. Or if you finish at the end of the night, at the end of the day, it's all night and all day. We'll see that in a minute. Schir Shabbos, Schir Chodesh, Schir Shana. If you're on either a weekly salary or a monthly salary or an annual salary, or Schir Shavua, you're on a 7-year salary, 7-year contract, the payment always becomes due at the end of your contract. How you survive until the end of that contract, you probably had a good contract that ended before that carried you over. Most of your baseball player, and you make $30 million in 7 years, you can probably afford to wait until the end of your contract, because you have $30 million from your last contract. Is that thunder? If you're finished your period of work by day, you can collect all day. And the next day. And the Gemara is going to get into the details of how this works. Okay? Zokt Rashi. That sounds almost like we're limiting the time to pay. If his job ended in the middle of the night, since he finished during the night, he's a schirlaila. The gist of the chilukim are, we know that the night is connected to the day, meaning the night is connected to the following day. So if you finish the middle of the night, so you already finished the following day, you have not only the whole night, but you have the whole next day, because the whole next day is connected to the night before. But if you finish by day, then you still have to pay that day. But the Gemara will elaborate. How do you know if you worked for the whole day, your payment period is all night long? Don't hold his salary until the morning. How do you know if your work period was all night? Then payment is due by the end of the day. It doesn't say applies to somebody who worked at night. It doesn't say applies to someone who works by day. So maybe it's exactly the opposite. As Rashi says, Leisalan is B'schir Laila, and Leisava is B'schir Yom. Maybe if you worked at night, you have to pay by the end of the day. And if you work by day, you have until to pay until, if you work by day, you have until the next day. If you work by night, you have until the next night. But tomorrow, because Schiras, for carrot. Maybe you should pay earlier. Maybe you have to pay as soon as the job is done, or during the job you gotta get paid. Who said you have any extra time at all? Tomorrow, because Schiras ain't mishtalamis elabusa. We already know, as Rashi is Kedamar Be'ezeu Neshech. We learned this in the Zeu Neshech from a pasuk, because it says in the pasuk Schiras Shana B'Shana. From that pasuk we learned that Schiras Shana Zu mishtalamis b'tchilash Shana Acheres. The chiyuv for your employer to pay you is only after you finished working. The owner is not mechuyev to pay the schiyim until shkia. So therefore, when it says loisavai, al korchach b'schir laila tukmei, it has to be by a schir laila where the payment was only triggered first thing in the morning. Shenishtabed loila boikim mishakol sechirus. The pasuk of loisolon nami loisukmei b'schir laila can't be speaking about somebody who worked through the night, because why would there be a law forcing you to pay right away if you weren't even mechuyev yet? If the chiyuv to pay has not even been triggered, it doesn't make sense that there be a law to pay. So it says you shouldn't let your pay, if you're the owner, you shouldn't let your employees' pay remain with you overnight. Leishalom means overnight. So I know that means until the morning. So I know it means until the morning. Why did the Pasuk say ad boiker? Leisolon by definition means ad boiker. Melamed, it teaches you she'enoi over ella ad boiker rishon bilvad. It's not like a daily lav. This is a one-shot deal. If you don't pay by morning, you're over a lav. After that, there are no lavin piling up upon you. So is there anything at all that's encouraging the violent to pay? Once he missed that target, so then why should he pay anymore? There's no more lavin anymore. What is baltisha? That is an isur derabanan. There's an isur derabanan of baltisha. If I look at one of the sides, he brings a pasuk from Mishlei. There's a pasuk from Mishlei that it quotes. Let me see if I can find it. This is my Rashi is off. I am off. So we'll see later on. It's a pasuk in Mishlei that says you shouldn't hold on, and of course that's not allowed. That's their brother. Okay, Zakti Marvaiter. Amar Yosy, my crop. Dr. Rashi, Heicher Remiza Baltisha. Where do you find Baltisha? Oh, I mamish missed the boat. The Gemara discussed it a second later. I just wasn't clear. Okay, that happens if I don't prepare properly. It says in the pasuk, this is the pasuk of Mishlei. I'll tell you, don't tell your friend, Lech, go, I can't pay you now. V'shuv, and then come back. U'macher eiten lach, and what etin, tomorrow I'll pay you. V'yeshitcha, you have the money. You shouldn't do that. So that is the lois. That is the baltisha that we're referring to. The pasuk in Mishlei. Therefore, it's only a issue there about. So that's what's encouraging the employer to pay as soon as possible, even though he's already violated the issue. Say uscharli payalim. Someone told his friend, go rent workers for me. And then he doesn't pay on time. Shneim einem over. Neither of these two people are over. Why? The employer never hired him. Somebody else hired him. And the person who hired them doesn't have to pay because they didn't work for him. Oh, Frank Duvi, the kasha that all the Rishonim and Achronim bomb on this sugya. These are shliach over here. The beautiful kasha. So right off the bat, the Rishonim have some different thoughts on it. So let's go back to how the Gemara introduced this case. It doesn't say Omer l'shluchai, tzarei schar li payalim. It says Omer l'chaveret. So there are some Rishonim that learn that it wasn't quite a shlichus. I was talking to my friend and I mentioned to him that I can use another couple of gas fitters. And then you happen to know some gas fitters. You said you don't want to come work for the guy. But there wasn't a formal minui shlichus. So that's what one of the Rishonim say. There are others who use a svara of en shlichus v'aravera. You can't be my shliach if it's going to lead to me being over in avera of l'solim. Right. So that's a whole tumble. How would that work? And the but there's a lot of discussion. This is the kasha of the sugya. I'm going to just stay with the most pashat pshat, and that is kubi. It's not a full shlichus. It's like a quasi shlichus. Okay, so Zok to Gemara weiter. Hey chidami, what was the case of how this guy hired these workers? If he said, I take responsibility for your pay, so then then in fact he would have to pay. The person who actually hired them would be responsible to pay. The Tanya we learned, if you hire a worker to work in your property, at least that's what they assume they're being hired for. And when you show the workers, this is not called for this rate. What's called for? Really? Because I have some air conditioners to install today.
No, it's just this morning for like
just to cool it off, so it'll be easier to work outside.
No, it's not going to cool it off. It's going to happen again in the afternoon.
Okay.
The morning shirt, the afternoon shirt.
And he pointed the work location by his friend, so they think they're working for him. They don't know that the work that they were shown is really someone else's work. The hirer, the person who hired these workers, is fully responsible for their paying out. And then the and then it's like he'll get back for the balabais what he was mahanim. So there, the person who hired them should in fact be mechuyev on loisolim. He said, I'm not paying you, I'm not taking responsibility to pay you, the balabais will pay you. Now, I want to stop a second. Based on this svara, there are other Rishonim who learn the reason why there's no problem of shlichos is because it's possible that when you hire me yourself and I'm meeting you face to face, there's an expectation that I'm going to be paid according to the Torah by the end of the night. But if it's this informal type of hiring, even though it might be considered a shlichus, even though there's a real shlichus, but we look at it like there's a tanai, the employees know that they're likely not going to be paid upon completion of their work, and as if they're moichel. And we are going to learn that an implied tanai is acceptable, so that there won't be a chiyuv of l'sol. So that's how some Rishonim learn that since we didn't meet the owner face to face as employees, we accepted it was like a tanai that we might have a different payment term than expected. Yehuda bar Meremar, what Yehuda bar Meremar used to do to avoid being over a lav is Amalei l'sham. He would tell the shamas, Zil agar li payalim. I'd like you to rent payalim for me, the emalu, and tell them scharchem al balabayis. I guess he was trying to pay them on time, but he wanted to make sure, as Taisha speaks out. Let me show you so of course, Rabbi Yehuda bar Meremar planned to pay his employees on time in full. What if he would be busy and he would mistakenly delay paying them? He didn't want to be over. But by doing this, here he won't even be over to Rabbanon. If he would be tied up with something else, he would not be over Baltisha because he's not delaying, he just got tied up. So that's why he did it. They used to work for each other. As Rashi says, to avoid a potential issue. Rabbi Bar Huna said, the employees that work in the shuk of Surah, over there, the problem is, if I'm a merchant and I get all my income when I do my sale, I incur a lot of labor preparing for the sale, preparing my schorah, getting it to the shuk, and I'm not going to come up with the cash until later. So therefore, the workers understand it's an implied tanai. They understand they're not going to get paid until the owner gets his money. Everybody knows the al yoyim de shuk smichi. They're relying on the yom shuk. Avol mishum bal tisha they over. They are over bal tisha, and we're going to see just in a moment why. Normally a wholesaler gives payment terms to the retailer because the retailer doesn't have the money to pay for the product. They have the money once they sell it. That's what payment terms are about. Unfortunately, they have been horribly abused. But the whole reason why there are payment terms is because where is the retailer supposed to have the cash to buy all the schorah? The idea is he'll sell it and then he'll be able to pay. I'm sorry? What's that? You can invest, that's right. They know that's where their employer is going to get the money from. Even if the person found investors, even if he had the cash, still because there's an implied understanding that the payment will be due at the Yom HaShuk. Once you're not over the first day, because the lav is a one-shot deal. That morning, if you didn't pay by the next morning, you're over. Once you're over, that's done, it's over. But Baltisha, you're over, because Baltisha means whenever you're delaying, as long as you're delaying, you're still going to be over. So you will be over Baltisha, but you won't be over Lisol. Amarav, if you're only working for a couple of hours during the day, as Rashi working part-time, the halacha is he has till the end of that day. Why? So you can still because the payment became due noontime, and therefore the pasuk that says don't allow the sun to set before you pay, that's where the chiyuv will be there. But if I was working in the middle of the night, then goiva kol halayla. I could one all night again. Since the chiyuv came in the middle of the night, he will be mechuyev to pay up in full before daybreak. Shmuel says differently. He has until the end of the day, and he agrees to Rav over there. However, as Rashi says, like Rav said, the next night is not connected to today. But if your employment term ended in the middle of the night, then your payment terms are extended till the next the end of the next day. Why? The day is connected to the night before. Since his work was in the evening of this day. It's not like a schiyom, the esmail, it's not like a schiyom, the esmail, that he only could take all night. Since he was working in the middle of the night, the payment term is extended till the end of the next day. So we have Machlokes Rav and Shmuel. Tanan we learned in the Mishnah. Schir shoyis goiva kol halayla v'chol hayoyim. Zok Gemara. Yishleim Shmuel mukila b'schir shoyis halayla. He was working partially at night, and therefore he has until the end of the next day, which is what Shmuel says. Ela Rav my mukila. Rav holds you never have a whole night and the whole day. If you finish the middle of the night, you have until daybreak. If you finish the middle of the day, you have until nightfall. So to you to the Rav, this seems to be an upshlag to Rav. Amar Lach, Rav could say, no, let's doesn't katan. Don't take the Mishnah on its face value. Let's split it up. If you work part of the day, yesh goy v'kol halayla, v'yesh goy v'kol hayoyim. So shkir shoyis goy v'kol halayla, kol hayoyim means some are goy v'kol halayla and some are goy v'kol hayoyim. Shkir shoyis the yoyim is goy v'kol hayoyim, and shkir shoyis the layla is goy v'kol halayla, consistent with Rav sheet. Tanan we learn. Shkir Shabbos, Shkir Chodesh, Shkir Shana, Shkir Shavua. This is in our Mishnah. Yoytze b'yoyim goy v'kol hayoyim, yoytze b'layla goy v'kol halayla v'chol hayoyim. That's not right. That's what our Mishnah says, right? So that's weiter shver, because Rav holds if you finished during the day, you should have until the end of the day, and you finish during the night, you should have until the end of the night. How does our Mishnah extend it till the end of the next day? That's exactly what Shmuel says. Rav Tanai, Rav will say you're right. In fact, I cannot agree with the Mishnah. But there is another Tana that argues on our Mishnah who I paskin. The Tanya, Shkir shows the Yoim, Goy v'kol hayoyim, Shkir shows the Laila, Goy v'kol halayla, Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, which is the Shita that Rav aligned himself with, and that's who Rav's paskin like. Shimon Omer, Shkir shows the Yoim, Goy v'kol hayoyim, Shkir shows the Laila, Goy v'kol halayla, v'chol hayoyim, which is the Shita of Shmuel, which is also consistent with the Shita of our Mishnah. From here we learn, Kol hakovesh schar schir. Anyone who retains the payment of a worker and doesn't pay when he's supposed to, over behei shemois v'asei halalu. The Bach flips around the halalu and the vasei. You over 5 lavin and 1 asei. Okay, now before we go weiter, I just want to bring up one little point. Who do we paskin? We have a machlekes Rav and Shmuel. If someone finishes working in the middle of the night, does he have until daybreak like Rav, or does he have until the next evening, which is Shmuel? Who do we pass on? This is Allah Lamaisa. So the question is, well, if there's a Tanai and an official payment period, but otherwise you have to pay in the day. If you have a goyta working in your house, you got to pay her that day. If you have if you hire some boys to wash your car before Pesach, you got to pay them right away. What? No, it's not for him. Sorry, I mean if you have a goyta who's Jewish. We're going to see this applies somewhat to Gleim. We'll see in a second. So there's actually machlokes rishonim. The Rosh, the Rambam hold that we paskin like Rav, because this is Isser v'Heter. So you over a lav or not, and we paskin like Rav Isser v'Heter. Well, it depends on what you made up with them. If you made up with them when you're going to pay them, you have to pay them by the day. But if it's just casual, you have to pay the day. I would assume so. I would assume so. We have to look at the halacha. Oh, theoretically, we do 7 days. So the question, and there are other Rishonim who paskin, the Smak paskins, that this is a shayla of Choshen Mishpat. So we paskin like Shmuel. So this is one of the many different cases where it's a monistic issue, but there's a lav involved, and the question is, do we look at it like Isuri and paskin like Rav, or do we look at it like Mominus and we paskin like Shmuel? So now there's 5 lavin and 1 asay. So to Gemara, what are they? I mean, so to Bryce, what are they? Mishum bal tashek esrayacham. You're not allowed to make oishek. So it says loy sashek esrayacham loy sigzol. That's referring to withholding salary. Mishum bal sigzol, which is in that same pasuk. Mishum bal sasok schir ani. which is a pasuk in Dvarim leisashik schir ani ve'avyoin. This is an important pasuk that we're going to dissect. Leisashik schir ani ve'avyoin mei achecha oy mi gercha asher ba'artzecha b'sharecha u'musum ba'al solin. It says b'yoy mitit neschorei leisavel of hashemesh ki anihu. Where does it say leisolin? It says in the previous pasuk. Okay, we have which we quoted just a moment ago, which is in the same pasuk of a yoymitit neschorei. So Zak to Gemara, Hani the Ika b'yamama like a belelia, the Ika belelia like a b'yamama. How can you say you always have a 5 lavin? We clearly explained that some of these lavin only apply to a contract that ends at the end of the day, and some of them only apply to a contract that ends at the end of the night. You're right. Shem schirs balma. We don't mean in every instance you'll be over 5 lavin and 1 say. It means there's 5 lavin and 1 say that apply to this sugya, but of course each case has their specific lavin that apply to it. Ezehu oshik ve'ezehu gezel. Now, right away you could ask, what do you mean ezehu oshik ve'ezehu gezel? We discussed this many times in Bava Kama. What oshik is, what gezel is. Oshik is not paying a worker. Gezel is stealing from somebody. What type of question is that? So if no means we have a pasuk that we just hear applied specifically to withholding pay, which is loisashik esre'echa v'loisigzol, which we said both apply to a worker. That's what the Gemara wants to know here. The Gemara is probing here this gzela that we say applies to someone who withholds pay. What instance does the Isser gzela add that wouldn't already be included in the Isser of Oisha? So Amar B'chista, leich v'shoiv zeh Oisha. If I say go and come back because I don't have the money now, go and come back, that's called Oisha. But yesh lach b'yadi ve'eini noishe lach. But if I say I have the money, but I'm not paying you, zehu gezel, that will be gezel. So you need 2 lavin, referring to two different instances of why someone's not paying. Matzikav or pshashis. How could you say that that's pshat? We have a brayso. Carbon, because we know there's a carbon shavua for one of these isurim. Dumya the pikadon. It's similar to the pikadon. The kakafar le'mamoina. So how could you tell me oishik means I'm just pushing you off? Come back tomorrow. Come back tomorrow. I haven't denied anything. I'm agreeable to you that I owe you. I'm just pushing you off. So how could you learn pshat and oishik is that I'm pushing you off? It has to be I'm denying mammon that I owe you. Elam Rab Sheshes. Therefore, Rab Sheshes argues with Rab Chista, and he said, if I claim that I already paid you, that's why I'm not paying you. That's oishik. So there's a denial. Yesh lach b'yadi v'yinayselach. So he agrees about gzela. I agree. I owe you, but I'm not paying you. Zeu gezel. Maskefla Abaye. Abaye still has a problem with that. Ezeu gezel shechayva olav atayra carbon. Domita bekadon bina. You could cover him a minor. But by gezel, he's not being covered money. He's saying I owe you money, but I'm not paying you. If I deny that I owe you the money because I claim you never worked for me, if I say I owe you the money, but I paid it already, zehu gezel, that will be gezel. Well, I'm not sure how halacha views a corporation. Like, how does halacha view bankruptcy? In bankruptcy is you made this fantasy company that's not me, right? And therefore, my company owes you. I don't know you. Does halacha recognize bankruptcy? I don't know. That's probably. I'm sure that comes up a lot in halacha l'maisa because I'm sure there's many cases where people went bankrupt and a guy went to Besdin. This Besdin, I don't think Besdin recognized a new individual called a corporation.
You over yourself.
Are you overpaying yourself? Well, what I would do, I would steal from myself, and then I would say that I have to pay kefil. I have to take double pay because the corporation stole from me. You could manipulate that at all. When the employers ask you, how come you get double what we get? Well, because the company stole from me, so I take back kefil. Zog to Gemara weiter. When Reb Sheshes originally attacked Reb Chista, he had a problem with Oishek that I'm not being paid for anything, but he didn't have a problem with Gezel. Gezel is the same problem, right? If I if there's no kfira. Malach, because he would have learned gezel the gozlai v'hader kafre. The case of gezela could have mean that he took away he paid him and then he took back he stole the money and then he denied it. So then why do you have a problem with Oishek? Oishek could have also been repaid and took it back. By gezel, it says oy begezel. If you look at it, if you look at the pasuk says, Nevesh kisechto umol umol b'Hashem kichesh b'misay v'bikadon oy v'sum yad oy begezel oy ashak es amisay. It doesn't say oy be'eshek. It's a different way of presenting information. It says oy begezel and then oy ashak es amisay. So it says that the wisdom hasam ksiv oy begezel michalal the oydle mebikar. You could learn that that's speaking in a case where there was a denial related to gezel. So it wasn't stam gezel. Related to gezel, there was a violation. As Rashi says, michalal the oydle mebikar. I'm in the fifth wide line. What does that mean? The masha goes led at the b'taris gezel kichesh achshav v'kafa. Regarding something that I might have already previously stolen, now I'm denying that I owe to you. So therefore, it was, I denied that I owed it to you, but before that it was stolen. So oy begezel means in a scenario that started off with a gezel, there was also a denial. But by Oishik, you can't say that. By Oishik, mix of oy by Oishik says oy ashak said. Meaning, that's what the discussion is. I've never paid you, so there's no kfir. So Zok Gemara, Rav Amar, Zehu Oishik, Zehu Gezel. You asked me a difference, so we started to look at different nuances of when Oishik would apply, when Gezel would apply. They're all the same. So why do I need two lavin for the same issue? Because of laver Allah b'shnei lavin, because if you're going to be over, you're over two lavin, not one lavin. Rash has been Tosh was asked if that's the case. Tema kedei laver Allah b'shnei lavin. But in the pasuk of Hasham Gezelos, where it's listing off the different things that would trigger an Hasham Gezelos, why do you need Gezel and Oishik? It's one and the same. It's the same thing. According to Rava, where it's really referring to the same case, Toshus does not answer the question. It doesn't make a difference if what you're paying for is the work of a human, or if you hired somebody's animal, or if you rented a car. These are all governed by the law and the Torah. You have to pay that day. Respectively, depending on when the term ended. That's Bisman Shatom. This only applies if the employee asked for the money. But if the employee didn't ask for the money, over a law, there would be no isser, as Rash says, over a law. The Gemara Yalaf lay, the Chsiv Itcha says the song post Itcha. Midaitcha, v'lo midaitoi. I believe so. So loy tavoi ain't over a love. You're not over. So midaitcha, if you unilaterally refuse to pay, but he wants to be paid, that's when you're over. But if he's also willing, then you're not over. Which plays into you don't mamish need at night. That's why if it's by the shuk where he knows he's getting paid later, again he's not even asking for the money. What if I put it into escrow? I gave it to a third party. So not he took the money out of his hands, the owner. And he gave it to a chemini. So you poil sorach liknois perish mechemini. Let's say I paid the chemini and I told the chemini, this employee has $1,000 credit by you. That's considered paid, even though the employee might not yet have taken the payers that he's entitled to. So as long as he already made that arrangement, Raji specifically says, even if I didn't pay it, if the chemini trusts me, that works as well. What if the guy didn't come for his payers yet? We asked, what if the guy came for the payers and the guy didn't give it? So I guess that's between him and the chemini. Once the Bava is authorized that, he's done his job. Okay. I wonder to myself. I mean, it's not like because I don't have Jewish employees that I pay this way. But if you use a payroll service, so when I have to click on Wednesday to authorize the payroll, but it doesn't go into the account of the employees till 2 days later. And that's probably because they make a lot of money holding on to my money for 2 days. So I wonder, do you have to authorize the payment that comes out of your account, or does it have to get into their account? I wonder how that would work. And we know that once the time to pay has been triggered during that period of time, we say that if there's a doubt, the employee always swears that he wasn't paid yet and he gets paid. But once the time expires, so it's the end of the next day, or it's the morning, depending on when he worked, he can no longer swear anymore. But if we have Adam, that the worker in fact asked for the money, then I raise a nishpa v'noitel, then he could already, then he could swear anytime, and he could run from the balabais. Ger toishav. What is the ger toishav? Rashi learns shekibel olav shalei lavan avodah zarah. He's not over avodah zarah, but he does all of the reveiros v'oichal nevelos and trades. So the halach is yesh by mishum b'yom titin schari. He is covered by that lav. The ein by mishum le'solem pulu sachitcha advoik. But he doesn't have the issue le'solem. Okay, so let's see the Gemara. Mani masnisen loy tanakama the me'achicha v'loy Rabbi Yosy v'Rabbi Yehuda. So we're obviously going to quote a brisa, and both sheets in the brisa will not be consistent with our mission. And let's see what the brisa is. The Tanya we learned. Me'achicha. What does it say in the pasuk? It says loy sashik tzchir ani ve'evyain me'achecha me'achecha prat la'cherim, to tell you that if he's not achecha, as Rashi, if he's a goy, he's not covered by the issur of leisashik sachir oni ve'evyain. Then it says me'achecha oy migercha, gercha ze ger tzedek. So this includes a ger tzedek. All the halachas apply. Bisharecha, because it says asher ba'artcha bisharecha ze oichal nevelos. This also includes a ger who is oichal nevelos, but he's not oiver avodah zarah. So ger oichal nevelos. Ichseve sharecha leger asher b'sharecha titnana v'yach. Ainli ele schar adam. We only know that the issur of leishalom applies if a person worked for you. But our mission talks about behemoths as well. Anything that's in your land, including if you rented kalim or a behemoth. And all of these are over all the law. Mikan amru echad tzachar adam ve'echad tzachar behema ve'echad tzachar kalim yesh boy mishum b'yom titin scharai v'yesh ben mishum ba'al tolan hu'ulas sachir. Zok Rashi, vein aksuvim kanu, vein amurim b'taris kanim, the aleph zer shava l'sinuya hachal k'lekamon. We're going to learn that the zer shava to say that all of these lavin apply. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda Omer, ger toishav yesh boy mishum b'yoyim titin scharai, ve'ein boy mishum loy tolen. There's no loy tolen. Ve'hevim v'kelim ein bahem ela mishum ba'al sashoik bilvad. So now that we have these two tanoim, let's see if any of them fit into our mission. Mani. Itanakama the me'achecha. If you're going to want to say that our mission is going according to Tanakama v'checha, kosher ger toishav, it's going to be shver ger toishav, because by us it says our mission with Pharisees is not in Baltalan, right? They're all over everything. And our mission specifically separates Baltalan from B'yom Titin Schari. But the aim by Mishum Baltalan, well, the Tanakam of our Mishnah says all of the lavin apply. So that won't work. In the Rabbi Yosy, and if you want to say Rabbi Yosy, kosher be'ema v'kelim, because our Mishnah says that it applies to be'ema v'kelim, and Rabbi Yosy says beferish, it does not apply to be'ema v'kelim. So who will be the Tana of our Mishnah? Omer Rav Zakrava, hi Tana, Tana devei Rabbi Shmuel. We actually have a third Tana, the Tana devei Rabbi Shmuel, Echad Sachar Adam, ve'echad schar behema, ve'echad schar kelim, yesh boy mishum b'yom titin scharai, u'mishum loy tol. So that fits into our Mishnah. What about a ger toishav? Ger toishav yesh boy mishum b'yom titin scharai, ve'en boy mishum baltalim. Beautiful. That's exactly what our Mishnah says. Frektem or mime timeba the Tanakama? What is the svara of the Tanakama who says that both Yisurim apply to a ger tosh? The Meyachecha, the Tanakama Meyachecha, Gomar schir. He darshans a gzer shav of schir that it says by both Lavan as Rashi does ksivacha loisasha schir, v'ksiv sachir, v'ksiv b'schir yoim loisom pula sachir. Makan ger toshav heim of a kelim is raboy af b'torish kahanim nami so too the pasuk in Vayikra nami ger toshav beim of a kelim. So even though technically the Psuka might not apply, but through the Gzer Shava, we say all the Yisurim apply to all of the cases. He doesn't learn this Gzer Shava. So Hilchach, the Teres Kahanim, Lesnu, Loibe Behema, V'Kelim, Loibe Ger Toishov, because all of the Ribuyim of Artzacha are only in Dvorim, not in Teres Kahanim, not of Vayikra. But in fact, Gemara need the Lagomer Sacher, so you don't have Gzer Shava. But Behema v'kelim mishum b'yoymai titein schari nami nechayiv. Why? The samachle, the hach samachle, the v'kadol ilksiv me'artzacha. It says me'artzacha, and right after that it says b'yoymai titein schari. So why shouldn't these apply to Behema and Kelim? Remember, Rabbi Yosy says that none of these Yisurim at all apply to Behema v'kelim. That's why Rabbi Yosy couldn't be the time of our Mishnah. But why not? Zok Gemara, Tani Rab Chananya, Amar Kra, you have a special pasuk that says, you know why you should pay right away before nightfall of the next day? You know why? Because this worker is an ani. That's why he's working so hard. People who can suffer from anis and shiras, yatu behema v'kelim, shein boin l'der anis v'shiras. Anis and shiras don't apply to behema v'kelim, therefore they're not included in the l'sov. V'tanakama. What about the Tanakama? I'm sorry?
Paying the owner is not
in Echanami, but since it doesn't apply directly to him, he's making a limit that doesn't. Talmud Loimar. What about the Tanakama? The Tanakama, Haiki Anu, my Obadli. The Tanakama holds that Itaka does apply to Kalim. So what is he going to do with the Kianihu? And the Tanakama will agree to you, right? The Tanakama does agree to your Taina. But what is he going to do with the Kianihu? My Obadli. This is the only place I think in the Torah where an Ani has priority over an usher. Normally, for carrot, it says the bezin can show favor to one or the other. Here, when it comes to paying, if you have a rich employee or a poor employee, pay the poor employee first. Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda, what about Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda? How does he know that? So why does it need two psukim of ani? Chad lahaktim ani la'ashir, the chad lahaktim ani levim. An ani gets paid before an usher. That's obviously because he needs the money more. But an ani gets paid before an Evan who's much more poor than the ani. So why would you prioritize the ani, give it to the Evan who's more desperate? Utricha. I'll tell you why we need both these halachas. The Ashmina and Evan, if I only knew that an ani gets paid before an Evan, it's mishum delay cost of the mitva. An Evan is so poor, he's already knocking on people's doors. So he will not be embarrassed to harass his employer to pay him. So he doesn't need so much protection from the lav because he's going to fight for himself. Aval Ashir, but an Ashir, the cost of the mitva, he's embarrassed to knock on his door, on his employer's door, to show that he's desperate. Amala, you might think he shouldn't have priority. V'yashmin Ashir, if I only knew that an Ashir, I pay the ani first, mishum the light tzarchle. The Ashir doesn't need it. That's why the ani is prioritized. Aval everyone the tzarchle, but everyone who needs it even more than the ani. Amala, maybe that he should have priority. Tricha. So what about an Ashir and an Evyon? An Ashir and an Evyon, we say an Evyon goes first. I mean, I think there are Shashas and the Evyon goes first. But Tana Didan, Manash. So let's look at our time. Iyal of Schir, if he is going to learn Schir, like the Talakam of the Brisa, if we look at Tosh of Nami. So all these halachas should apply to Ger Tosh. And he loyal of Schir, and if he doesn't dash Schir, how does he know Behema v'Kelim? Behema v'Kelim, we know it. He doesn't have the Gzer Shava, that's why we don't equate a Ger Toshav with a regular Yisrael. So how does he know there's a Chiyah for Behema v'Kelim? B'shani Yosam, Damar Kra, V'loi Solon Pula Schir Itcha Ad Boiker. Kol Shapula Schir Itcha. Anything that they're working for you, as Rashi says, V'afilu Behema v'Kelim. There is work happening with you, it's more inclusive. Frank the Gemara, if it's more inclusive, he's working for you as well. His work is with you. So why wouldn't all these halachas apply equally to a ger toishav? Amakra reacha. It says reacha below ger toishav. Frank the Gemara, reacha is memayit. Who said you should use it? You memayit to ger toishav. Yachi yafilu beim v'kelim nami, because beim v'kelim aren't your friends. So So we have a riboy of itcha. We have a miyot of reacha. Umar rois l'rabbis behema v'kelim. Why are you using itcha to be married behema v'kelim and reacha l'hoitziger toishav? Dr. Gemara mistaber. It's mistaber to say that because behema v'kelim havle l'rabbis. It's more mistaber to include all of these isurim should apply to renting a behema v'kelim from your friend. Why? It is your friend's money. So your impact, like Dubi said, you're indirectly impacting your friend's welfare by not paying on time. But ger toishav einoi b'chlal mammon reach. It's not mammon reach. He's not a yid. The Tanakama learns from mechacha that everything's included. Hi reacha my avdilay. What is he going to be mad with reacha? He's not being a mad ger toishav. He includes a ger toishav. Now Amaleki doesn't just mean an Amaleki that we have to wipe out. It means all goyim, complete goyim. Frank the Gemara, Amaleki me'achecha nafta. I already know from Achecha that Amaleki is not Achecha. Why don't you reach as well? Chad le'mishra oishkoi, chad le'mishra gozloi. One to tell him that you're allowed to tell us that you're allowed to do oishik from a goy, and one that says you're allowed to make zela from a goy. Obviously, this Gemara holds zela takim is mutter. But trichi, the Ashmin goes gzeloi. If I only knew that the gezel of a goy is mutter, we shouldn't do a tarich pay. He might have assets that he didn't work for. Maybe he yashin them. Who said that the assets that you're stealing are that he works for? So maybe that's why you're allowed to steal it. The tarich pay. But if he works hard to not pay him, that's a much more severe blow to a person. Emaloi, maybe we're not memayed a goy, and maybe you're mechuyev to pay him right away. That's why you need the pasuk to say that even his oshkoi is mutter, yashmin oshkoi, and if we only knew that you're allowed to withhold his pay, you should lo yas lo yodei. He never got it. You're withholding something that he never had. That's not as bad. Abul gazloi, das lo yodei, to go into his house and to violate him and take away something that's his, emaloi, maybe it would not be mutter for you to do. Shricha, that's why we needed both. That's why we needed both sukkah. Zak the Gemara, Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda. Let's look at Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda. Hi loy salam pulas schir itcha ad boiker my ovidlay. What is he going to do with that pasuk? Dr. Rashi, the Marba B'nei Tana de Don, our Tana uses this pasuk to tell you behema v'chelim. Al Gav the Gzer Shava Legomer, even though he didn't have the Gzer Shava, he used it to be Marba Gzer v'chelim. But Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda learns from schir. Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda, hi loy salam pulas schir itcha ad boiker my ovidlay. 1 second. What's the problem? Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda, he does make the chiluk, right? Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda, he's a second Tana, he does make the chiluk. Let's see what the Gemara says it. No, he's loy gomer schir, so that's why he doesn't include beim v'kelim. Okay, so the question is, why does he need? Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda, hi lo shalom pulas schir itcha ad boiker my ovidlay. What? So what's the problem with it? So itcha is marbe. Why does it need to be marbe if he has schir already? To be he has lunch schir. The marbe b'nei Tana the don behema v'kelim aval gavs gzer shava legomer.
Kalim don't have this.
I mean, so he learned from itcha behema v'kelim, but he doesn't need that because he doesn't have this. Okay, very good. So Zok to Gemara, my avoid lecher basi. Damar basi afilu loy sachrai ela liv tzarloy eshker lechad shalanovim. Even if he used him for such a small amount, Rashi says it's a schir shois, even though it's only a schir shois, oiv mishum baltol. I guess to tell you the chiddush, it's not only for schir yoim, it's also for schir shois. Ve'idach, so how can a common know that schir shois is included in the Yisurim? Me'elav hu noise is nafshay nafka, davar ha-moiser nafshay alav. Someone whose moiser is nefesh on it, Rashi says it means kol sheshiva na atmelav. He was meshabed himself to do work for this person. Okay, let's stop here because this is going to go all the way to the 2 dots. I'm not going to do it anyway. So we'll tomorrow.
So